have a name. This is the Figuring It Out podcast. And the goal of this podcast is to bring people on that didn't always have things figured out in their life, but just like the rest of us, they're figuring it out today. And today I've got Roman Soyko on. Roman, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, man.
And today what we're going to talk about is a lot about Roman's life. So if you don't know, Roman does have a podcast and was a huge inspiration for me even starting this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask him some questions about growing up, how he came to America, and then how he kind of has evolved throughout his career doing many different things. So Roman, out of the gate, I got to ask, I haven't seen much content from you about what it's like growing up in another country, but kind of give everyone an idea of what it's like growing up in Eastern Europe compared to when you first came to America.
Yeah, we'll get into that. But first, I want to tell you this. I had no clue that that I inspired you to start a podcast until you told me that I did. Well, actually, you posted it on Facebook, and I was like, what? Like, me? I'm like, who am I inspiring to do anything? But apparently, this is just how life works, I guess. Just by us doing our daily activities, we are inspiring other people because other people are watching us, especially if you're like producing, you're putting content out there. People look at you as the authority. So I'll give you big props for starting your podcast.
Yeah.
It was a good business move. All right. What was the question? Oh, how?
Yeah.
Was
so
like,
kind of
okay.
talk to about, I think a lot of us, we see the news, we get scared. We don't really know what the other side of the world is like, but obviously you've been in both. So what was it like for you growing up there?
Well, so I grew up in the Soviet Union. Okay. That was back before all the countries broke apart and became their own country. So that was the Soviet Union. I think that was prior to 92. So I was born in 86. So I was born in the Soviet Union, like the Red Army, like all that stuff you saw on TV back in the 80s and 90s. That was the communism. I grew up in communism. And then I saw communism collapse. I saw what happened there where there was no government. Corruption, crime, it was just crazy. Currency, money just disappeared overnight, just in thin air. Like your money was worth nothing. It was crazy. So yeah, I got to live through. I still remember like standing in lines at the grocery store with my parents, and money's worthless.
And you're a young kid, so I mean, you're actually seeing that this is your first reality of the world. You didn't know that it was any other way, or you did kind of know in the beginning what a normal world was like.
No, that was normal for me. That was normal. I was so culture shocked when I moved to the States. I was like, wow, oh my gosh, like this is unbelievable. But let me kind of take you back a little bit. So I grew up in a house with no running water. We had no heat. We had like a stove that was also a fireplace, and that functioned as our heat source. There's no running water, so you had like a toilet outside, like an outhouse, like back in the 1800s. So to go to the bathroom, you had to go outside. So me as a kid, like with 6-year-old, 7-year-old with a flashlight, I'd be out there at midnight. You want to go take a shit? You got to go to the outhouse, So, so basically, yeah, man, that was my reality. We couldn't take a bath because there's no running water in the wintertime. So we had to drive over to our friend's house that lived in like government housing. So government housing meant like you're cool in the Soviet Union. Government gave you a house. So and they had hot water and stuff, so we could take showers there. Yeah, man, it was a different world. It was so different that sometimes I look at my kids and I'm like, wow, you guys have no idea.
You ever think about taking them to like see it?
It's different now. It's
like
more
that.
Civilized and modern now. You see, that was the Soviet Union. That people don't understand what communism really is.
Yeah, I think a huge thing that I'm seeing in my generation is there's a lot of people that it doesn't seem like there's a real middle ground. There's a lot of people that want to go the entrepreneurial route. They love capitalism. They see its benefits, but a huge, especially in like going to college here in the US, socialism, communism, I think is preached at the highest level in a lot of like college institutions. And I guess, what would you say to like someone my age who's, going online and they're posting, we need more communism, we need more socialism in our society? Like, where do you think that disconnect comes in?
Well, first of all, they don't know any better because they're young. So they just repeat what they see on TV or on TikTok or on Reels. They don't have a background, or they never studied the history. Look throughout history. Look at history and look at every communist country or communist government that attempted it. Every single one of them failed. So that's all I have to say about that. Every single one of them has failed.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. Yeah, I guess in theory, on paper, if I guess it could kind of make sense if I look at it from another perspective, but it just realistically it doesn't work because you're rewarding people for doing no work, and that creates a culture of laziness. And laziness, if you have a culture of laziness, your country will never thrive.
Yeah.
It'll barely survive, and that's what I was. I barely survived in the Soviet Union, man. We just I remember standing in lines to get government bread, government cheese, government milk. And so that was before the Soviet Union broke apart. And then when Ukraine became its own country, there was a lot of corruption. That transition period, there was no government. So like literally no government. Like police are corrupt. Government officials are corrupt. Everything was just crazy, mass corruption. Mafia was taking over. So the organized crime was big in the 90s. There's a lot of movies about that. You can look this stuff up. So then when Ukraine kind of became its own country, then, we started becoming normalized. And, then we started getting normal food, and we started getting imports from America. Like I haven't seen, when I was a kid, I didn't know what Coca-Cola was. I never ate a banana in my life. So So then when those borders opened up to the European Union, so now we're getting like, I figured out that Nike's a brand. Like, wow, Nike, but before that we lived in this bubble. That's what North Korea is right now. They live in the bubble thinking that the world is just North Korea. Well, that's how Soviet Union was, man. Just we lived in the bubble, not knowing anything.
So did you when you're talking to your family, like what was the plan? Was it we need to move right now? Or was it kind of like this dream of like, one day we're going to get out of here?
You couldn't get out of there. It was not getting out of there. You had to, so basically you had to win the lottery. It's like a visa lottery. You had to put in for it and win the lottery, and then you had to leave. And then basically when United States asked, well, why are you trying to get out? There's a couple of standard answers that got you out, and one of them was religious oppression. So we were like religiously oppressed by the government, and that's how we got out. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we won the visa, and then we had to go through this whole interview process, and then you had to have somebody here in the States who was willing to vouch for you and become your sponsor, financial sponsor. So luckily we had somebody here, and we won the visa. So it's like winning the lottery, man. So we won the lottery.
So how old were you when you came here?
14.
So coming here at 14, you didn't know much English, correct?
No English, no.
So yeah, like you just went straight to high school?
Yeah, I think 14, was it high school or was it like 8th grade?
Middle school, high school?
Yeah, one of those. Yeah. No, I just didn't know anything. I had to learn. I had to learn English when I was 14. I knew nothing. I knew zero.
So 14 through 18, let's just call that the middle school, high school period. You obviously had a huge shift of like opportunities available. How did you go through being a guy who had nothing and options weren't even really a thing to then coming to a country where you're almost overloaded by them?
So how did I go? Like, what do you mean?
Like, how did you decide what to do with your life at 18? Because you had so many options.
Yeah, you had so many options. But see, I didn't, as a 14-year-old, I didn't even know that I had no options because I didn't think about my future as an adult. I just lived as a kid. You don't know any better. You're thinking about watching Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. But basically, when I realized that I have options, I don't know. I wanted to do a lot. There's a lot of things I wanted to do. Like we were talking previously, I wanted to do art. I was creative. I was really good at it. I got a scholarship in high school. I wanted to be in the military. I wanted to be a police officer. I wanted to do this. I had so many different avenues I was going to go. But I landed on becoming a police officer. Yeah, I wanted to play football, professional. I played semi-pro right after high school, so I wanted to go professional, but I injured my knee. But yeah, so what ended up happening, I went to the police academy after, I did my 2 years, got my 2 years in college, and then I went to the police academy. I became a police officer. I did 10 years as a police officer. 7 of those years I was on the Swat team, did some cool stuff. But to answer your question, I really didn't know what I was going to do. And I decided to be a police officer at the age of 20. At the age of 20. So prior to that, I was kind of clueless. I was playing football, playing basketball. I went to an art school. I really didn't know. And that's the other thing. Like, we're pressuring these kids to make a decision at 18. They can't. Their brain's not developed enough. You know, and even now in my 30s, like, my career trajectory has completely changed. So I know I'm kind of all over the place, but I'm just telling you, I'm trying to explain.
Yeah. So I think the big one that I've always been curious of is, like, making the decision to become a police officer can't be an easy one, or maybe it is for you. But when you're in that life, like, obviously I imagine it's very high stress, a lot of risk. You're kind of always in that fight or flight state. When was it in that 10-year timeline that you started thinking, like, oh, I can't do this forever?
So when you're young, I got into it at 23. You don't think about, like, oh, I may get hurt, I may get killed. Like, you don't think about that stuff until when I started approaching 30. I started really thinking about it. And then especially after I had kids, that's when it really hit me. That I was like, man, I'm doing some dangerous stuff over here. We're getting shot at. Like, I could get killed, so that's what really started, got me down the path of, like, I need to look for other ways to make money, other than just being a police officer. So, yeah.
And when you were a police officer, did it feel like you were making good money in the beginning? Like, did you feel like, oh, I'm making enough, I don't need to strive for more? Or was that something that developed?
In the beginning, yes. I was like, oh, man, I'm making all this money. And it was chump change. Looking back at it
What was it right now, or at that time?
I remember my first check, bro. I got my first check. I still have it saved. Was $1,100 for two weeks. So every 2 weeks I got paid $1,100. But I had insurance. I had the retirement plan, all that stuff. So yeah, at the time the money seemed good, and then when you get married, you have kids, and you're like, I need more money. That's what pushed me to get out of it. Is the money, the danger aspect, and then just the other thing about it was like the lack of sleep. I felt like crap, man. I was always on call. I'll come out in the middle of the night. We have like call outs, all these freaking incidents all over the city, and we covered like other jurisdictions too. So I would be getting called out in the middle of the night, so that sucked. I would have to work a 12-hour shift, and after a 12-hour shift, we go on the call out, or I'll wake up at 2 a.m. to go on the DEA raid in the morning, and then do my 12 hours. So it was just too much, and all at the same time, I was running my real estate business. So I'm balancing so much. And I got married at the age of 29, and I started having kids in my 30s. It was just too much. So that's when I started thinking about exiting the police career. Yeah.
Do you ever get flashbacks that you're going to have to answer that call again at like 3 a.m? Or
Not anymore. No, but
for a little bit?
No, not anymore. I don't get flashbacks or anything. But yeah. Don't want to get too much into that, but it's there's some stuff that sticks with you for a long time.
Yeah.
So if I do get flashbacks, it's other stuff. Yeah.
And it's not any, like, comparing it. I mean, I think a lot of people my age get stressed with business. If something bad happens, maybe you go late on a project and you have to pay a little more. Is that stress even comparable to the stuff you dealt with in the police force, or no?
No, well, stress is stress. So I guess the cortisone levels or whatever in your body, it doesn't know one from the other. But for me personally, looking back at that type of stress, and then me taking on business risks, I really don't think these are risks. Because when I look back, the risks I took were like risks with my life, risks with my health and safety. So those risks are incomparable to risking some money.
Yeah.
Because what's the worst that could happen? The deal can go bad. You lose 20 grand. You lose 40. You lose $1 million. You can go bankrupt and still be alive and still be fine, and then recoup all that and then start over and be just fine. So that's why I always compared the risks. I'm like, man, those were real risks. Business risks, they're just paper risks, or they're just numbers on your screen. That's all it is. It's not a real risk.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people need to hear that, including myself. I think that's a good reminder that, there's no way I do an edit wrong and, blow out a knee or get hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as you're kind of in that, I know I need to get out. And so you're having kids, you got the wife that you care about. What was the first moment of, like, because I know you said you were working in the real estate business while you're still active duty, correct?
Yes.
So how did you make that decision of today's the day, or was it kind of a process of like, I need to get out of this?
It was a process. There was a day that hit me, that it all hit me. But I want to touch on this. A lot of people think I don't have time. Like they'll say, I don't want to start this thing because I don't have the time to do it. It could be as simple thing as working out. It could be like a simple thing as starting a side hustle. And people will say, I don't have time. Well, just to show you guys that I'm no better than you and no better than these guys that are running these this studio. We're all the same, okay? And we all have the same amount of time. If they can do it, if you can do it, if I did it, anybody else out there watching this can do it. I worked 12-hour shifts. I rotated shifts every 28 days. I was on the SWAT team. I was flipping houses, and I was running a real estate portfolio of single-family long-term rental properties while having 2 kids and a wife. So for some people that say I don't have time, I just want to slap them. What are you talking about, bro? You don't have time. I was getting my master's at the time too. Yeah, it's and you know, it's just funny to me, man. Okay, now to answer your question, it was a process. I slowly started thinking like, yeah, you know, this is not healthy for me. This is not good. This is dangerous. I need to get out. I need to get out. And one day I was sitting in my police car and I literally made up my mind. I don't know if it was might have been a bad call, or maybe I was looking. I don't know what triggered it, but I was like, I need to get out, and I need to come up with a game plan on how to get out, because right now I can't. I'm stuck in the W-2 grind. Like I'm relying on this income. So then I kind of broke it all down financially. From a financial perspective, where do I need to be for me to leave this job? And I was like, all right, well, I have like 2 rental properties at the time, or 3. I was like, all right, well, I'm getting paid this much from the rentals. Well, what if I add 2 more or 3 more rentals? Where am I going to be financially? Am I going to be able to leave them? So I kind of reverse engineered what I needed to do to get out. And I came up with a plan and a timeline. And I remember back then I was like, in 2 years, I'm out. Yeah. I need to stick to this plan and get out.
And did you have, I want to make the same amount I'm making, or did you actually set a higher income goal for yourself to when you're actually in your own real estate business compared to being a police officer?
At the time, I just wanted to make the same amount so I could continue living the same lifestyle. That was my goal, just at the time. So I was like, all right, so if my police income stops, how many more rental properties do I need to make the same amount? But then everything changed overnight because I flipped my first house. I was making $45,000 take-home money from my police job. When I flipped my first house, which took me about 3 months, I made 60 grand. 60 grand in one flip. And I was like, holy crap, like I just made 60 grand. And I'm making 45,000 working like all these nights and weekends. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I need to do another one of these, and then like I'm set. Like I thought I'm set. Like I thought I didn't need to work. I thought that like once I have 100K in the bank, I am untouchable.
And how much time did you spend to do your first flip? Like how long from beginning to end did it take
like
for you to
3 months. It wasn't even that long. It was so simple, man. I found a house for sale by owner on Zillow, called him. I went to see the guy, saw the house, literally gave him an offer right there on the spot because I knew it was a deal. And me and my dad did the work. It took us about 3 months. We sold it and made 60 grand. But see, I already knew construction because I already had rental properties. I've done rehabs in the past, and I forgot to mention I did have a summertime construction job in college. So I was working construction, learning the trades when I was in college. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that's a big issue for like younger people my age? Like my dad asked me at dinner the other night, he goes, have you ever actually put a nail and a hammer together for anything needed in your life? And I got offended. And then I thought about it and I haven't.
Really?
So like when you obviously like talking about contractors and having a crew, how hard is it to find work? And do you find it from a lot of people your age, or do you try to hire young talent when you're trying to build your crews out?
Well, first of all, yeah, you need that skill. I feel like every man needs to know how to do this stuff. And not even for the simple fact of like, I need to know how to do it, but if you're hiring this out, you need to make sure that that guy knows how to do it. And the way you vet him is by seeing like, hey, asking the right questions. If you know the talk, if you know the construction talk, you see it and you feel it from the contractor. If he knows what he's talking about, you're like, oh yeah, I've done this, so I know you know what you're talking about because I see it through your conversation. Hopefully that makes sense. But like, wait, what was the other question?
No, I was just thinking about it because obviously a lot of people that are going to listen to this, they probably have a motivation to get started in real estate, whether it's a rental, whether it's a short term, or even like a flip like you teach. But I think the question I guess I'm asking you is, do you think the worker shortage that everyone talks about is very real? And do you personally struggle to find talented workers?
So I've been with the same people. My subs have been the same for the last 5 years. Maybe even more. Some guys come in and out, every now and then I'll lose a guy, I'll bring another guy on, but my main core of subs have been the same. So I don't really find, in the beginning, like if you're new, you're going to struggle because you don't know anyone and you don't know what you're doing. So you might bomb a flip, you might lose some money, you might lose some money to a contractor that you trusted that you shouldn't have trusted, but that's the learning process. You got to go through that.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of people quit. Like they'll lose money on their first flip, or a contractor takes advantage of them and takes a $15,000 deposit and never calls them back. And they'll be like, oh, see, real estate sucks. Well, no, I went through that. So, and I stuck with it, and you chose to quit. And then you tell me real estate sucks. No, it's because you just don't have the grind to get through the tough phase to then, be on where I'm at now, I guess the easy phase. And there's no ever easy phase. Every phase is another step and has a separate set of challenges.
Yeah. So where you're at now, I mean, how many flips are you averaging per year in Northeast Ohio, let's say?
We did about 12 flips last year.
And what were there any other projects that you bought as like your own rentals?
Yeah, we do rentals. We did one Airbnb last year. We added about 7 rentals to a portfolio or something like that.
And do you think for people listening, like what would you say a realistic timeline is if they're willing to fail, if they're willing to, get screwed over a couple of times and work through it to get to the level where you're at?
Well, I'll tell you, I started in 2012. What is it, 23, 11 years? So 11 years. But see, that I took a couple of years off where I bought like a few rentals and I kind of stopped. If I condensed my time into actual working time, I would say in 5 years, no, if you're really grinding, like if this is your full-time gig, you could probably get to where I'm at in less than 5. But if it's your side hustle, it's probably more like 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And would you recommend flipping as a side hustle? Do you think that's a good place for people to start or no?
Flipping is the most complicated out of all the avenues because out of all the strategies in real estate, now we're talking about single family, right? We're not talking about apartments or commercial or even hotels. We're talking about single family. Flipping has the most moving parts, meaning you have to buy it right. So the acquisition, you got to buy it right. Then you have the remodeling aspect of it, which you got to get down. You got to get that right. You got to keep your costs down on the remodeling. Then the disposition. The disposition is selling, the selling part. There's a skill when it comes to the selling. And I didn't know any of this until I learned. So then the design aspect of it, like how am I going to design my flip? So there's a lot that goes. I truly believe if you can flip a house, you can easily do an Airbnb. You can do whatever. You can house hack. You can have a long-term duplex. You can do all those things if you can flip a house.
Yeah.
It's just it's the hardest. Well, it was for me because there's so many moving parts, so many different things I had to learn. And they were harder than like learning how to rent out a duplex. Like I figured that out. I just listed it on Zillow. I found the best person and I put a lease together. But with flips, there's a little bit more. So would I recommend starting in flipping? I would say yeah. Yeah, I mean you could. I don't ever want to discourage anyone, but see, you have to have a strategy. Like, do you need a lot of money now, or are you playing a long game? Because if you're playing the long game, you need to get into the long-term rentals. I would invest the investment of a long-term rental will outperform any 401k, any long-term investment, any stock market, any day. Okay. Now, if you need the money now fast, yeah, wholesale or flipping.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it seems like wholesale's the immediate money, get the sales muscle, start to understand the market. Flipping, like you said, it's learning the moving parts. And I think even for me listening, you know, I know a ton of real estate people. Most of who we manage social media for is real estate business owners. And I think for me, there's definitely a paralysis of options. You know, I don't want to take my focus away from the main gig, but I also feel like every time someone asks, oh, do you invest? I'm sick and tired of saying no. And so I think, you know, obviously where you're at, you're in a bigger evolution of growing. So one of the things Roman and I talked about the last time we spoke was having bigger goals. And sometimes the goals seem so big that they scare the shit out of you a little bit. So like, what is your big goal for 2024 and why are you choosing to take it on?
Yeah, man. It's a bit, so it's spec homes. Spec homes. We're building new construction houses to sell on the market. And I'm not even doing it here in Cleveland. I'm doing it in Florida. So that's my big goal, to get that one accomplished. And then I might, these are not like tiny homes. These are $2 million plus like mansions that we're building. But, you know, you don't just get to do that overnight. You kind of have to build up your confidence level in your construction experience and knowledge, and even the finances. You have to build up your finances to make sure you can even finance a thing like that, you know. And then the confidence level too. Like I wouldn't do this if you asked me 3 years ago. I didn't feel comfortable enough, but I have the confidence now to do it. So yeah, so we're building that. Another big goal is I want to start developing here in Cleveland as well. That was also one of my big goals. I slowly want to get rid of all my like single family portfolio, my duplexes and all that. And I want to put it into an asset that will last a long time and that I can pass on to my kids. So, and I was thinking about it. I'm probably going to build some sort of luxury apartment studio complexes or something like that. There's some people that are doing this already here, actually around this area. And they're like 4-story buildings, open floor plan, fully furnished. They're running these things at like $6,000 a month. So that's another big goal of mine, is to start developing.
So how do you think about taking a risk like that? Because if we kind of listen to your timeline, there was Roman as a kid shitting in outhouses, Roman coming to America who was just happy to get an art scholarship, and then hearing where you're at with real estate. I mean, I know a lot of people in Northeast Ohio, and they've told me behind the scenes, I like Roman's content, I've learned from it. And these are people that are well respected in the industry. So like, how do you kind of not stay complacent when you have all these layers of growth you've already been through?
Bro, it's day one. You know what that means?
Yeah, what's the quote? It's day one, not one day, right?
It's the day one mindset. I have a day one mindset. When I was a police officer, I never wanted to be complacent. Complacency kills, literally. In police work, complacency kills. In business, complacency just stagnates you. And so for me, it's day one every day. Yeah. Every day I wake up and it's day one, it's go time. I get up, I hit the gym. Every morning I have a gym at my house. I work out hardcore, and then I go right into doing work. And my mindset is it's always day one. There's always more work to be done. So I do not get complacent. And when I feel like, oh, this is becoming easy, just like in the lifting weights, you know, you might hit 225 on the bench and you're like, this is becoming easy. You got to put some more weight on there. You know, you got to get up to the 315. And when you hit 315, what's next? 405. You got to get to the 405. Same thing with your deadlift. So this is how I operate in everyday life. Like I always have to go to the next step. I always have to think bigger. I always have to do bigger and better things. And for whatever reason, 2024 was the year that, well, we're still in 23, but 24 is right around the corner. I made up my mind that I'm done playing small. And, to some people might think I'm not playing small. Some people think like, oh man, Roman's doing some big things. But to me, I was not doing big things. When I look at people that are actually doing big things, I'm like, man, I'm not doing big things. I need to do bigger things. And that's when I was like, all right, first of all, I had the belief in myself, and then I made up my mind that 2024, I'm playing big, And then I said, I'm doing it. And I took that step. And when you take that step into the bigger opportunities, you start asking bigger questions. So I'm not asking what type of sub do I need to hire anymore. I'm thinking, what builder do I need to partner with? I'm not asking, how do I save money on these appliances? I'm thinking, what kind of lots do I need to buy to make sure that these houses are valued over $2 million based on how the sun direction is hitting them? I'm not thinking, let me get a line of credit for $100,000 from a bank. I'm thinking, how do I raise $2 million to build this? So see, now you ask yourself bigger questions. And when you ask yourself bigger questions, you start answering them. And then you're playing in a whole different arena than you were before. Does that all make sense?
It's advice I've heard from several people. And I think a big part of me understanding that's going to be me applying it to myself, because I think it's great when I see someone like you do it and make these decisions. But for me, I think a lot of what I hear in that is you're having to find different people, which is a skill in and of itself. You're having to find others who have done it. And you even told me, I think the last time we spoke, that you and your wife had sat down with a builder and the guy gave you a ton of useful information. And when you went home, all you thought was, if that guy can do it, why can't I?
Yeah.
And I think for me, one thing you touched on in the beginning of that is the priming in the morning. Get up and lift every day.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I don't talk about nearly enough, but I've seen it kill so many of the people I've worked with, is they might really be good at making money, but when it comes to like what food they're putting in their mouth, are they sleeping enough at night? Are they present with their family? I mean, that's not there. And I think a hard part of being a business owner is understanding how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Yes.
So like, how do you, or what would you say to the guy out there that, yeah, he's made a few bucks, but he's miserable, he's overweight, and he doesn't know what to do next? Like, how important is it to take care of the non-business stuff so that your business can succeed?
It's very important because every avenue or every aspect of your life makes up you as a whole, right? So I'm just going to throw some stuff out there. Let's say you as a whole is 25% business. You and your wife's relationship is another 25%. You and your kids is another 25%. And you and your social life or your family or friends is another. So all that, and then let's say health is another 25%, right? So all that makes you as a whole. So if you're lacking in 75%, but you're crushing in the 25%, you're really not optimal. If to really live a full, optimal, fulfilled life, you have to crush in all of them. And I love what you just said. How you do one thing is how you do everything. So if I'm going to strive to be the best business owner and be the best developer in Cleveland one day, then I need to be the best husband and the best father. And then I need my health to be prime. That's why, I stay away from certain foods, work out, like you said, every day. Health is important. I make sure I get enough sleep, all that stuff. Because if you're lacking in some of these little things that you think are little, you're not going to be your best self to do the big things that you consider as big.
Yeah, it's been a hard one for me in the last year of remembering that, going to dinners with Katie, lifting every day, and also pushing yourself in those lifts. Because I think that's another thing. We talk about complacency, and the other night I was texting you that, comfort feels good when you first get a little bit of success, but then when you look at why am I not growing, the only thing you can point your finger at is the comfort. Mm-hmm. And I think for me personally, I've tried to emulate a lot of what I see in people like yourself and others that are successful. And the big question I guess I have with all of this is that something you had, or is there still a guy in your head who has to say, Roman, get out of this bed right now, it's time for the lift? Or is it something that's now easy to you at this point?
It's not easy. It's not easy. Every day is a struggle. Every day it's the same internal battle. So yeah, it's for people that think that successful people are just born different, or maybe their DNA makeup is different than yours. No, that's not true, man. We're all breathing the same air right now. It is just that I push myself through those things. When that little voice in the back of your head says stay in bed, I tell it to shut the hell up, and I get up. When that little voice in the back of my head says, don't do that investment, that's dangerous or risky. Well, I tell that little voice to shut the hell up, because I know that if you don't make that move, you're going to continue living at the same, nothing will change. if you don't change, nothing will change, right? Does that make sense? Kind of like you have to push through these things. You have to.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, man, there's a lot my brain's going to right now, but the one I want to ask you about is the people. So I was texting the other night about your mastermind you're in. And for me personally, it's a huge struggle. So I'm selfishly asking, how do you find the other people to mentor you, and how do you trust them to be a mentor?
So I had a few over the last 10 years. I think whatever the stage of life, we're all in different stages, business, career, or your life. You'll find somebody that you connect with and somebody that is doing what you want to do at that time. Maybe he's doing exactly what you want to do, and he has the proof that he's doing it. So my first mentor was doing what I envisioned I could be doing. And I'm still connected to this guy, man, and he's still doing the same stuff, and he's growing the business, and I'm like right there with him almost. But then, you might find somebody, especially if you outgrow that first mentor, you might find another guy that's more aligned with your values. So what I learned over the last 10 years, I kind of bridged the gap, the mentorship gap. As soon as I bridged the gap, I went on to another guy. And I found another guy who's doing bigger and better things, or maybe just things, but he's doing them a little bit differently. So I learned from not just one guy. I had a couple different guys that I learned from in the real estate game. And then they helped me, and every one of them helped me in a different way. One guy helped me with flipping. One guy helped me with hiring people. One guy helped me with virtual assistants. One guy helped me understand wholesaling better. So then when I felt like, all right, I don't need these type of masterminds anymore, the tactical masterminds, I need a mastermind that can just lift me up as a human. That's when I joined the one I was in last year. Still am, actually. And that one is more of like, there's a bunch of badasses in there in all sorts of business, not just real estate.
Yeah.
So now we're having higher level conversations where it's not like, hey, how do you assign the contract on the wholesale, or what type of remodel you do? No, those conversations are not had in those rooms. You're talking about how to make these type of investments or that type of investments, how to invest into your kids, how to have the best relationship with your wife, how to look at at the market in a 10-year cycle. Like you're looking at things from a high level now. So to answer your question, if I had to bring it back down, you find the guy that you align with in the beginning, and then as you grow and you bridge the gap, move on to the next guy who's also doing, now maybe that guy's above the first guy, until you grow in the business enough to where you're comfortable and you say, well, you know what, you can look back. I look back at my very first quote unquote mentor. It's a local guy. He just owned like a couple of rental properties, and I looked up to him because I'm like, oh, he's so cool. Man, he's calling me now. He say, man, how are you doing all this? I remember you were asking me how to sign a lease. You're building houses in Florida. What? Like how? I'm like, hey, man, it's all masterminds. It's all getting into the rooms with these people, man.
And a lot of these virtual? Like, are you meeting a lot of these people? I know you said the first guy's local, but because for me, I guess the bigger question I'm asking is how do you trust their advice? Because obviously it's not something you've done, but you know that it worked for them. Like, did you struggle with that, or was it pretty easy for you to go, this guy knows more than me, I should take their advice?
Actually, the first guy I ever met was on the podcast. I listened to his podcast, and I listened to his podcast for like 2 years until I joined his mastermind. Yeah, like 2 or 3 years. So I kind of knew everything about him. I knew everything about his business. I was like, yeah, he's legit. Like I could tell by listening to him for 2 years. So, yeah, it was virtual. So it was like a Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
I had a couple that were in person. I went to maybe 4 that were in person. But yeah, I mean, nowadays, most of it is virtual. They'll have your Zoom meetings and stuff like that. And then maybe they'll have once a year, a couple times a year, they'll have like an event that you go to.
Yeah.
And that's where you really establish connections, because you can sit like me and you are now.
Yeah. And
you can have those conversations. So the in-person events were really impactful to me. The Zoom ones, you're getting a lot of value, but the in-person ones were the most impactful.
Yeah. And so back to, I guess the original question is when someone would give you, because I've been in 3 myself. The first one was just the foundations of running a social media company, you know, how to set up a Stripe account, how to make sure that you have passwords, all the easy stuff. The next one, I think vulnerable moment, I failed as a student with him. He was much further than I was. I mean, the guy was low end profiting $150K a month, and I was nowhere near that. But the thing I think I failed with is they would give hard advice sometimes, and I couldn't wrap my head around the advice itself, and that would paralyze me from taking the action. Is that something you struggled with, or do you kind of put yourself in that day one, I paid this guy to mentor me, I need to just do what he says? Or have you struggled with that?
I haven't had that experience because I never overstep my own ability. So if I knew that this was like, I wouldn't go to a ground up development mastermind, how to develop multifamily 3 years ago. I wouldn't have done that because I knew, first of all, I'm not confident enough. I don't even have the belief in myself that I can do it. So whatever they tell me is going to be one ear and not the other. They're talking on a different frequency. I'm not there yet. Okay, they're up here. I'm down here still. So I wouldn't even join that one because that's too high level for me. So I try to join the ones that were kind of like, they're just above me. I need a couple more steps and I can get there. I need that little nudge. And then once I got there, I found another guy who brings me a couple more steps up. And that's how I did it.
It makes me feel, I just did that. So I just hired a coach that was a little bit above. So I guess, yeah, that answers my question. And so with all of these, I mean, obviously you're getting into a bigger world. How do you see yourself making more connections? Do you think it's that same ladder, or do you think there's going to have to be certain actions you take, whether that's from getting your net worth up, getting your branding up, similar to this and the stuff we're doing together? Like, how do you see yourself accessing these higher power people?
It's going to be through, I'm going to join another mastermind in the future. It will be, that's the only way. People that are super high net worth, they don't just walk around and with the red flag or with the sign.
Let's get coffee.
Yeah. So they protect their time and they protect their personal life. So to be in those rooms with those people, you got to pay to play. And it's, sometimes it's 10 grand, sometimes it's 30 grand a year, sometimes it's 100 grand a year. So but that investment that you make, it will pay you tenfold on the back end. Because now you already know all this. I don't have to. But yeah, these people, being aligned with these people is crucial. But here's the other thing. One of the most important skills never talked about is the ability to communicate. And just being able to talk to people and just being able to connect with them and listen to what they're telling you. And then and establishing those connections. Because those connections can transfer to bigger paychecks. And the reason I'm saying this, because that's exactly how I got into building. I met builders, and I established a like and know. So there's 3 things you got to establish with communication: know, like, and trust. So they knew who I was. They liked me because, I guess they liked me because of the conversation we had, and they eventually trusted me. And when you get that connection down, you can partner with people. Or you can help them. You can help them. They can help you. They can mentor you. So I knew I was always going to get into building houses, new construction, but I didn't know how I was going to do it until I met this one guy, and he opened the doors for me. So that's why I say ability to freely talk to people is so important, and that's what we're lacking right now. And with the social media and the phones and all that nonsense, go to any event. Most of the people are going to have their heads down in their phone. Nobody's talking. It's sad, man. I take my kids to gymnastics, and these kids, not my kids, all these other kids are so just, brainwashed by iPads. They can't even talk to my kids. Like my kids never had an iPad phone in their life. So they go in there as kids talking to other kids. And other kids are like, they grunt and they don't know what to say because there's no social connection. They don't understand how to act in a social setting, and that's what I fear for the future is the lack of communication, and that is the number one skill you need to have.
Yeah, I think the last topic we'll go over, because I think you're touching it on the head, is How do you see the importance of creating versus consuming at every level, whether that's kids and making friends versus, us in business being willing to not get stuck on our phone watching all the other builders, but actually putting your own advice out there, sharing with people what you're doing so that you can then leverage that? Like, how important is it to create instead of consume?
Content, you mean?
Yeah, I think in life, even with business, but just let's specifically say content here. How important is that?
It's the most important. It's one of the most important things. I mean, as a consumer, most people, I would say, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's like 95% of people are consumers. I mean, we're all consumers, right? We're all consumers in a way. Some consume in a higher capacity. But the creators, which are the entrepreneurs like us, there's not a lot of us because it takes risk management. It takes some guts, and it takes you feeling and you knowing that you may fail and doing it anyway and pushing through it anyway, knowing that all the work could literally mean nothing and still waking up every day and doing it. So that's what a creator does, right? An entrepreneur. On the content side, I would say it's important to get your brand out there. I used to be a consumer, and then from being a content consumer, I saw some other guy post about this and say, hey, did you know that there's only like 1% of creators and 99% of consumers out there of content? Which side do you want to be on? And I was like, oh, holy crap. Like that's when my mind opened up. I was like, yeah, man, I need to be on the other side. And that's when I started doing my own content. And then obviously we met, and we're doing good, big things together right now. But yes, that's when my eyes were open to becoming a consumer, to, build your brand, creator, building your brand and all that stuff, getting recognized. In business, it helps so much too. Now you are an authority figure just by creating content. And we're not doing anything crazy, bro. We're having a conversation on the podcast for an hour. You're about to film me delivering some materials and talk to my subs. Easy.
And you already do that anyways.
Yeah, I already do that anyways.
Yeah.
So why don't we film it, put it out there, let other people watch you. Now you're creating brand recognition. You're creating authority. Now, if you need private money, people already know what you're about. They see you on social media. You can raise private money. You can make relationship connections. When you go to these masterminds, you know what they say? They'll say like, hey, what's your Instagram? That's how now in our world, that's how we're judged.
Yeah.
What's your Instagram? And it's like, oh, my hashtag is, oh, okay, here's your whatever. Oh, yeah, that's me, number one right there. Oh, they're like, oh, and they judge you off your followers and your content. So that's why it's so important.
Yeah, and for a lot of the people out there, like let's just say they already have the business, they have the means to hire a team, to hire editors, filming person, all of that. How do you talk to the emotional risk? Because I see that 10 out of 10 times, that more often than not, it is not actually a business or financial risk. There's some emotional risk that they're not willing to take to talk on camera. What was your version of that?
There was, yeah. It's like, I don't know what it was. You're just, I guess, fear of public speaking. Isn't that like the number one fear in America?
Probably.
That's what it is. What are people going to think about you? And then it was about 5 years ago when I went into making content. I went all in, and I was like, man, what do I care what they think about me? Are they paying my bills?
Yeah.
No, get the hell out of here. So then that's when I stopped caring. And then I remember I even made a post about it on camera, and I said, I actually don't care if you care or what you think about me. I don't care. Yeah. That's why I'm going to continue producing content. So I think it's the fear of what are people going to say, friends and family, what are they going to think? But that was like when I started those 5 years ago. I think now, especially with Alex Hormozy and what he's doing with social media, and then you got Gary Vee and all these people, it's become more normal now. Yeah. It certainly is more normal than it was 5 years ago, and especially what it was 10 years ago. So for those people that are still like on the fence, should I be doing content or not? Dude, just freaking do it, man. Yeah. You'll see. It'll pay off in a way. Maybe it won't be immediate. Maybe it'll be a year from now. Maybe it'll be 5 years from now. But it will pay off. And in the digital world that we live in, it's not just like, oh, maybe I should do it. It's like a must.
Yeah.
Like you have to do it, especially if you're in business.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy to look back on this and see that this will be an old podcast one day.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, the biggest thing I think that cracks me up on that side is a lot of people have to get through the first, what are people going to think about me? And then I kind of have to humble them a little bit and say, let's just focus on getting people to think about you in the first place. Because the reality is not many people have that. I mean, right now, this is our second podcast. I'd be shocked if this reaches 50 views. But the reality is when I bring you on in a year, there will be an audience there that cares, and then we'll cross-reference this episode.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, 100%. I do agree with that. Yep.
All right, dude, I appreciate having you on, and we got some videos to film.
Awesome, man. Let's do it.
All right, we will see you guys next time for episode 3.